Hey there, everybody. I truly hope you've been doing well. I just was, lately I've been using the Oric lately, and I thought I would do a little video to show the differences in the models over time with these, because, um, essentially, this selection of Orics I have is, this white model on the right-hand side is from January of 1999, and then I have, which is a model 2800, and then I have the gray model 2600 from November of 2000, and then over here is when they would have introduced the XL2 models. So the one right here, the 40th anniversary edition, and this one was made in October of 2003. And then the red model, which, by the way, is the one I'll be showing running after I've talked about these, this one is from 2004, which, to my knowledge, was the first that they introduced the XL2 Ultra, or the first year, I believe, because they would do an infomercial in 2003 for the 40th anniversary edition, and then they would go on to do the another long 30-minute advertisement for the 2004 model with the differences to that. So mainly, to start out, probably the two biggest differences they made over time was that on their early machines, so on these two, and right before they would introduce the XL2 Ultra, they would not have I'm not sure if it's the true term for it or not, but on the later introduction of it, has this, I've always just called it the chest plate that holds the outer bag up and keeps it more flat. And on the earlier models, it was, as such, it had no plate on it. It was just, the whole bag is just a soft bag. But in my opinion, though, there is one slight and pretty good advantage to that, is that with the bag not having this plate, you would be able to do what I've been doing to these when I would clean them, or I get one, I can do it with one hand or not, where the bag came loose and someone kept running it with no bag in it. So what I would do is, when you open it, is that once this is down, you can take the bag off too on this. It's just that it's a little bit more difficult to wash these because you have to leave it to dry, because it would probably tear if you put this in the clothes dryer. But on these you can, actually, because when this is off, basically the bag can be disassembled, and you can remove this bottom half as well, and just undoing it with a screwdriver, and it can come off, and the whole bag can be washed in the washing machine, cold water. But you could also do what I was doing, is do a pre-rinse of the outer bag in Lysol, the Lysol laundry disinfectant, which is what I've done on all three of these and any others that I may get, and it does a really good job with that. It keeps it pretty clean. But anyway, so that's one major difference, and so that would have happened in about 2004. So this is among the first to have the plate be introduced on the bag. And then the other pretty big difference is on the models. So these two models is in the handle, although the 2003 one is a little bit more faded than the 1999 one, but in any event, so the 2003 one is actually the one that's originally from my family, but my family has had Orecs all my life, so and I watched the infomercials growing up and everything. So I feel like it's one of a few brands where I just sort of feel I can say some of the history by heart, you know, because I sort of saw it happen. But anyway, so at that point in time, how they would design the upper handle was there was actually this pigtail cord design in those early years, and I think even earlier in the 90s, I would presume, so that this could be unhooked here, and then you could unhook the cord all the way down and remove the handle and fold it down if you're wanting to travel with it or in any reason you would need to. And that was one thing. And then as well as that the cord would just out, and it was just the naked cord as it is. But in about 2003, so that, because I saw a couple from 2002 that still have this older design, but in 2003 they would come up with what they would use even up to this day, which is that the cord would be coming more at a low angle, whereas on the older models it's just out here and just comes straight out. And the other difference was obviously a couple extra screws to get in here, but other than that, it's about the same. And then, but the biggest other difference is it does not unhook here as it was in the early years. So if you were wanting to change this out, you would have to just go rewire that whole section down to the bottom of the unit. And then the other difference is where it comes off of the motor is about 2002, I would say, is when I've seen it. I have a XL Classic, and it's a model 2400 RS that does have the new version, and it's from late 2001, so perhaps it was about that time. But if it was earlier than that, it had a different version, so this would be able to come loose, and I think that's why they revised it. As you can see, that you'd have to have a screwdriver to undo that, most likely. So that's probably the biggest differences over time that Oric has made. And another thing is, I was going to say that they weren't doing the 2-speed motor, but I was wrong, because this one from 1999 does have the 2-speed version of the switch. And then I've seen even earlier models, you know, in about 1995 or so, still having the ability to have a 2-speed switch on them. So not 100% on that, but they've been doing that longer than I first thought that they were. So, and then another version of the switch are the one where it's lit up when the cord is plugged in, which is what this model has. And I think that sums up the majority of it. And then this one has sort of an amalgamation of all those new things, because this was their, to my knowledge, this was basically their next to flagship model at the time, because they would release that XL21, which that's always going to be, I still think, their best machine they did until they were sold, you know. And but so I would say this was their one step below it, but because this was the one that my mom chose after she traded in the XL Classic. She got this is not the model, but this is exactly the same year and color and everything that she had. And we owned it from about 2005 to 2009 at that time. And all my families had Orecs, like I've said, but, you know, I know that they get the bad rap because they, you know, they are best as surface sweepers, but at the same time, everywhere I've lived, we've had carpet that's as low as this, and they take care of it for the most part. And it wasn't until my grandma, who was originally owned this one here for all this time, this is her place, and it wasn't until then, and she was sold a Kirby Centria, and went through an entire bag or two, you know, of the dirt that it wouldn't pick up, but, you know, but for what it is, for what I need, for what I'm doing and everything, I just love them. So, as I said, as I've been using the Wind House, I've also been using the XL2 Ultra, and I think that goes through most of it. I will show the difference of the bottom here before I run that one. So, I'm not going to show the bottom of this one because I changed the base plate out with a modern one, so that's kind of not going to be the right look. So the difference on these two, it's not much, but actually, no, I will, because that way it can display the difference a little better. There we go. So, the bottom plates from later on, they decided to integrate 2 extra wheels, and this did have a sweeper, but it's worn out now, unfortunately. And then they would have double bristles for the edge cleaning, or edge cleaning. They're not the best edge cleaner for sure. You kind of have to go head on, but it's there, as I said. And then on the older models, so these two do have their micro sweep blades, so that's good. But they don't have the 2 extra wheels in the front. I've honestly not noticed too big a difference with it. Maybe it helps turn the machine a little easier, perhaps, but I don't notice a ton. And so yeah, so they would take those wheels off at that point in time. And then the only remainder history of Oric that I can think of that's sort of important is that the original factory, the New Orleans factory, which is where all these were made, because they're older than 2008. So I think it was late 2008, that factory was hit by a hurricane, and so they weren't able to produce them there anymore. So they relocated to Cookeville, Tennessee, which is where they still make some of their machines, but some, because because now that TTI owns Oric, a majority of their machines, the commercial units, I know for sure the blue version is that they're made in China, and a little bit cheapened because they've went from the wood roller to some sort of plastic rollers. And other than that, that's the majority of the differences over time with the Orecs. And so I'll be vacuuming some with the red one in a moment, but let me get these out of the way. But I'll show them, give them their own videos at some point in time. But anyway, so I'll get these sit over here. I'm not vacuuming for a couple of days, so this should be a good show for it, hopefully. And then the other, while I plug this in, the other little thing about Orecs that I've learned over time is when they used to talk so much about their service plan back when they were selling these in their stores, or it was, you know, the stores would carry majority Oric at that point, is that basically what it is with them is they would come in, you would bring it in yearly basis, because they would want to be sure that your brush roll is still okay, because that's a wearable item that can be replaced, which I actually did do on all of these Orics. I bought a new roller off of Amazon. They take the CWP roller, and then they check that, check your belt, and then the other important part to check with Oryx is this fan housing, first of all, for no cracks. Luckily, none of those did. But they also check the fan chamber seal. And you can still get that on Amazon as long as they have it in stock. And that's something that really just wants to kind of degrade and fall apart over time. So I changed that as well on all of these. And so is basically to check that the wear on those perishable components of these. So hopefully I can plug this in with one hand. Maybe. Okay. Sorry about that. I'll plug it in here. There we go. And I actually just did laundry, so I actually got lint that fell out, so that'll be a good test. So anyway, so let's see here. There we go. So this is the 2004 XL2 Hypo-Allergenic Plus. So the Ultra one, and I believe this one is probably during the time that they made that long infomercial. But anyway, regardless, we'll turn it on and go to low and then high. So that's they would do that because you would have it for your, to go on lower, to have it on low speed. And then you have your carpet speed right here. guys, so as you can see, makes pretty quick work of that, although, as I've said, I'll go over it with something that does a little bit of a deeper job, you know, at some points, but for just sweeping it up and getting it surface cleaned up like that, it does pretty well. So I hope you guys found that pretty neat, maybe pretty interesting to see the differences, especially, over time with those. So, and before I go, I do want to say I need to remember their name. I think it's Shax Presents, and they're brand new to YouTube. And I highly suggest, if you're interested in vacuums or anything of that nature, to go subscribe to him. He just started about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I've already watched a lot of his videos. And yes, so I'd highly recommend going and looking at what he's been up to. Pretty interesting videos. So I really hope you guys have a good one, and I will see you when I get the chance. And you guys have a good one, and I'll see you.